sure if you're cold or hot, so sometimes when you're here, it's going to be hot, sometimes it's going to be cold, so we can please everybody that way, right? I keep going back and forth, I'm freezing, oh, I'm hot. So hopefully you'll be comfortable enough to listen. All right, Miss Tori, would you come? And we have until 11:15 in here, and then we'll break to go to the next session. All right, ladies, let's go ahead and pray. And we'll begin this session. I'm excited to hear Miss Tori speak to us today. Dearly Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you that we have it to guide us through life. I thank you for friends that you bring into our lives. I pray that you please help Tori as she speaks to us today. Help us to be receptive to your word. In Jesus' name.
Hi, ladies. Oh, man, I'm nervous. Woo! I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that right now. There goes some trash on the floor. I joke around a lot. It helps me with my nerves. And it's so sweet of her to give me the auditorium, but I really thought I was going to be in like room 102, 101, really small room, maybe even a restroom. That would have been great. So, but it's so good to see all of you here. I'm so glad you're here. I have been asked to speak on relationships, and when I first got the email from Joy, and she said her and Mr. Amling were hoping I would speak on, I was like, I was convinced. I said, Lord, they're confused. I'm really not supposed to talk about relationships, and maybe they'll email me back and change it or something. I feel like so completely unqualified and inept when it comes to relationships. I also feel strange because I'm in the middle of my life. I'm not really, I guess I am an older lady to some of you if you're really young. And I'm a younger lady to some of you if you're not so young. And so I feel like I'm kind of in the middle, and I'm really gleaning from so many different women around me. It's so exciting. But through the week, last week, I just decided, the Lord told me to speak on this, not just Jerry Lynn, but the Lord did. He tasked me with this responsibility. And I said, Lord, would you just please give me whatever it is I need to speak on, and whatever it is these ladies need to hear, and would you just teach me too? And so I really prayed on it and thought on it, and the Lord gave me an idea. So I'm going to tell you right up front that this is not original with me, okay? My husband spoke on something months ago in our church, and it was so helpful to me. It was just life-changing. And I thought if there was anything I could speak on that would help these women like it helped me, maybe I should do it. So when I was looking through my material, I realized that we were going to talk about relationships. And the subtitle is Learning to Love Like Jesus. So that's your title for today, Relationships, Learning to Love Like Jesus. The purpose of this is very basic. It's learning the difference between need and love. A lot of us are confused as to what love really is. I know I really was. And so we've all seen this in action, right? Someone who says they really love you, but what they really need is they need you. They don't love you, they need you. They need something you have. They need a talent of yours. They need you to be their shoulder to cry on. A lot of people are needy people, and they mean well when they say they love us, but really it's actually that they need us. They need something from us. It could be in word. I had a hard time with this as a young girl. I'll just be really honest with you. I constantly told people I loved them all the time. I love you. Oh, I love you. I give them hugs. I love you. And I really think I thought I meant it. My dad, my mom, people at church, kids at school, strangers in the grocery store. Maybe not that far, but I told people everywhere that I loved them. I would repeat this to people who maybe I really did love, but I told them I loved them for selfish reasons. What I really wanted more than anything was I wanted to be told, I love you back. That was why I was saying it all the time, because I wanted to know somebody loved me. And so I'd say, I love you, hoping for that. Oh, I love you too, And so I told them all the time I love them. The problem was I wasn't always surrounded by people who really did love me. To be honest, none of us are. 7 hours at school in a class where I didn't pay close attention and wouldn't sit still, and my teachers just wanted me to leave. okay? They didn't always love me. Or maybe at a babysitter's house where there was someone that really couldn't wait for my parents to pick me up. I hoped for a word from someone that could fill a deep, deep need way down deep inside my soul that no human being on the planet could fill. Maybe you love indeed. Maybe you're the kind of person who loves to give gifts. This is my mom. Oh my goodness. It puts such joy in your heart if you can give someone a gift. Maybe this is the way you tell them that you love them, is you're always giving things, you're always buying things for people, always helping out someone in need. Or maybe you like to get gifts from people. Maybe it makes you feel loved, helps you in a relationship when someone's always loving on you, giving you things. But when someone forgets your special day, or your birthday, or when the gift that you give isn't returned, when a thank you card isn't received, a deep sense of hurt or rejection wells up inside your soul. Maybe it's in friendships. When I was really young, I had a really close friend who did not treat me all that well. But I held her in such high esteem that it didn't really matter that she didn't like me to have other friends, or that she wasn't the best influence in my life. I couldn't give her up because in order to feel valued and loved, I had to keep her friendship. My highest priority had to be top. Instead of speaking truth to myself and speaking truth to her about how this would hurt me in the future and how it would hurt her relationships in the future, I kept telling myself, oh man, this person really loves me. She really loves me. I'm so glad she's my best friend because she loves me. Let me tell you something. None of these are love. None of them are love. These are all needs. And not Jesus kind of love, but a human kind of need. Need is self-focused and self-serving. Love is others-focused and others-giving, self-giving. And if we want to learn to love like Jesus, we have to look at the way he loved and love like he loved, okay? So this is the way my husband defined love, and I love that. I thought it was great. Someone can use it. Love is a spirit of self-sacrifice, most clearly seen at Calvary. Love is a spirit of self-sacrifice, most clearly seen at Calvary. We're going to look at several Bible verses in the book of John today, but let's start with the most familiar verse in the Bible. What is it? John 3:16. Let's say it all together. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Very good. The most clearly seen act of purest love is that of the Father giving. It says, for God so loved that he gave. So the clearest thing we can see is Jesus being given by the Father. Okay? He gave his Son. And then Jesus gave his life for us. Never before and never since has any act been so unselfishly extended towards you. Never. There's never been any other kind of love you could have ever known in the world that was more loving than this love. The love of God came through sacrifice greater than we could ever fathom. Because he gave, and because of his sacrifice, we're loved fully, freely, no strings attached, no need, forever. So if we're learning to love like Jesus, I ask myself this question all the time. Are you a why person? Do you constantly ask, but why? Why? I think I was that 4-year-old, but mommy, why? Why? She getting an answer, but why? Why? Why did God love? Why did he love enough to give? Why did Jesus love us enough to give his own life? And there are 2 answers. And these are our answers for our reasons to love others. Okay? Number 1 is for the glory of God. Always for the glory of God. He gave his Son to showcase his glory. Jesus gave his life to showcase the glory of God. Number 2, for the salvation of the world. And let me tell you something. The reason you need to know about real love, the real reason you need to know how to have the right kind of relationships based on true Bible love is because you need to showcase the glory of God and for the salvation of the world. If we are not loving people the way Jesus loved, if I am not loving people the way I should, then I can't showcase the glory of God and I can't see souls saved. Jesus did the will of the Father, though it brought him sorrow and agony, because he loved the Father and he wanted to glorify him. And because he longed to see the salvation of the world that he and his Father had created. And so he gave, so we ought to give. 1 John 4:8 tells us, he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. We can't really know what real love is or how to love others if we don't know God, because God is love. I tell teenagers who are dating these boneheaded guys all the time, he loves me. Hold on, he doesn't know Jesus, but he loves me. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know God, so he doesn't know what love is. It's very simple. You have to know God to know love. Okay, so point number 1 is, I'm just going to tell you these because it's so much easier that way. There is a difference between need and love. Okay? Let's turn to John 10. I'm going to have to go faster. John 10. This is not my normal Bible. Okay, look at verse 17. It says here in John 10:17, therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I might take it again. He states that the love he has from God himself comes from him laying down his life. Do you see that? The good shepherd will lay down his life for his sheep. In chapter 13 of John, flip over to chapter 13, we see a beautiful picture of love right before he lays his life down. Okay? So if you go there with me, I'm going to read very quickly through verse 5. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come and he should depart out of this world into the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil, having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given him all things into his hands, and that he was come from God and went to God, he riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that he poured the water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. I love that just before the ultimate sacrifice, Jesus demonstrates for us the essential part of love. First was giving, right? For God to love the world that he gave. And the second part is sacrifice and serving. Even towards those who didn't love him back. Jesus was still there. He was still in the room. He was at the table. He sat at the basin. Jesus washed his feet, knowing he would betray him. He didn't do it because he needed something from Judas. He would get nothing from Judas. Judas would take, not give. But Jesus loved him anyway. And so not only does love give, it serves. Jesus knelt and he served. I love that it says in verse 1, before the feast of the Passover, do you see that? And then comma. Then like a paraphrase, it adds because of what Jesus knew was coming and because he loved them. And at the end of the paraphrase, he says, he loved them unto the end. So if you take out the stuff in the middle and you say, now before the feast of the Passover, he loved them unto the end. It's the whole point of the verse. What does that mean, the end? The end of his life? No, he would live forever. He would keep on loving them. Not to the end of life, but to the end of love itself. I think that's so beautiful. He loved them fully and completely, as much as he could possibly love, all the way to the end he loved them. Perfect love. And how does he extend that love? With a stool and a towel and a basin full of grimy foot water. He washes their feet that have walked through the streets through mud and cow poop and dirt, sand, and all kinds of stuff. He washed it off because he loved them. He wanted to show that he would serve them, not only sacrifice, but he would serve them. John 13:34, if you just flip over. It says there that just before Judas leaves, he asks them all to love one another the way he loved them. So he shows them, he gives them an example, and then he asks them to do the same thing. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. And then he says, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Remember, we're loving for the salvation of the world, for the glory of God. That's why we're doing it. John 17, 20 through 26. Jesus asked the Father to put inside his followers the love that God has for his son Jesus. There could be no greater love. That's his only begotten Son. And he loves them in a special way. Why? Because the world needed to know the love of the Father. Sacrificing, serving, giving. Do you see the difference in what we call love now and what kind of love that Jesus Christ had for us? It's a huge difference, right? Even the love that we think we even have maybe for some of the people in our family or for some of our best friends. Ask yourself this question. This is a good one. This is one that Tyler asked in his sermon, and I had to ask you guys. What or who do you feel like you really need? Who is it that you would say, without this person, I cannot live my life to the fullest? Some of us think of a boyfriend or a child, or maybe all of our children, maybe our husband, our mom, our dad, a best friend. Can't live without this person. Whoever or whatever that person or thing is in your life, listen, is who really controls your life. Because you need that person or that thing. You are in bondage to that person or that thing. You don't really love them, and you cannot grow as a child of God living this way. Because the more you need them, the less you'll really love them. Because whatever, whoever I find my joy in, other than Jesus Christ will always be my idol. Right? Anyone we love more than we love Jesus Christ himself will be my idol. And any idol I try to find fulfillment in, and I have done this so many times in my life, any idol, any person or thing that I try to find all of my fulfillment in will become something or someone that I end up hating, because no human being on earth can possibly fill a heavenly desire. Jesus put that desire there for a reason. It's because he can only fulfill it himself. That can look like an obsessed husband or wife duo. Have you ever seen this? I'm not talking about a healthy one, but a husband and wife duo maybe talk about each other constantly, post about each other constantly, talk to other people about how perfect they are, how wonderful they are. Sometimes it happens maybe at the beginning of a marriage or after the kids leave or something, and then somehow years later they end up not together anymore, and you wonder why. And a lot of times it's because they really did try to find all their fulfillment in each other when they only could get that from Jesus Christ. And even your husband, who's there as a gift to you, cannot give you what you need. Only Jesus can do that. As we evaluate our earthly relationships, let's be honest and say whether or not we're trying to fill that heaven-shaped hole with a human longing or a human need. There's a difference between love and need. Second, when I understand that I am loved by God and how loved by God I am, I will have everything I could possibly need. When I understand I'm loved by God, I will have everything I need. In Ephesians 3:13 through 19, Paul says, Wherefore I desire that you faint not at my tribulations for you, which is your glory. For this I bow my knees unto the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, that ye being rooted and grounded in love. Then he describes what real love is, right underneath it. May be able to comprehend with all saints what is the breadth and length and depth and height, and to know the love of Christ, which passeth knowledge, that ye might be filled with all the fullness of God. He says, I want you to sink the roots of your life deep into the true love of God. And when you do, when you stop leaning on all the people and the things and the hobbies and maybe the medication or the food or whatever it is that you're leaning on and trying to get your fulfillment out of, you'll discover that God's love is so big and so deep and so wide that it's humanly incomprehensible. And as you learn to sink in the love of Christ, and you do it every day, every moment, you will be filled. Use the word filled there. Fully, completely. You'll have all you need. You'll stop seeking it from relationship after relationship after relationship. You'll stop expecting so much out of other sinful and needy people, just like you. You'll start craving the love that you want, that comes from when you fill yourself full of things and people that can't satisfy you. When you know the true love of Christ. We've been told in our culture that our family and our friends are there for one reason and only one. And you've heard this, so I know you have. And that is to build up our self-esteem. They're there to give our lives meaning. They're there to make us feel good. I mean, I've even heard this in Christian circles, like, the reason you ladies have kids is, they're your everything, and you give your lives to them, and they'll give their lives to you, and things like that. They're supposed to validate us as women and friends and moms and workers. We're supposedly these love tanks that need to be filled constantly. I even mistakenly believed this for a while. Man, I'm having a bad week. I'm just crabby. And you know why? My husband hasn't said I love you in like 3 days. And that's why. If he would just do his job as my husband, if he would just be nice to me, then I would be nice to him. So it's really his fault. Right? Or my kids have treated me bad for 2 months. And I'm about up to here at my limit. I can't take it anymore. I need someone to pour into me. We have that coffee date with that friend that we're hoping will pour into us so we can go back and love our families. But no amount of human love or adoration we are given will ever completely satisfy us. We will always need more. Always. But God's supply is inexhaustible. It will never go away. It can be drawn on, and I love this, it's a well that's always full. It can be drawn on daily. It can be drawn on every moment of the day. We can be filled to the fullest as long as we seek him. He'll do for us what no one else can and will ever do. And that brings me to my third and final point. When you understand how loved by God you are free to need people less and love people more. When you understand how loved by God you are free to need people less and love people more. Do you have that person in your mind still? That person who you need so badly? Or maybe you have that person in your mind who really needs you. They really need you. I want you to keep thinking about this as we're talking. In 2 Corinthians 12, 14 through 15, Paul speaks to the church there in Corinth. And directly to some of the people who'd slandered him and questioned his motives toward those he had seen come to faith, he writes to them and he says, "Behold, the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you. For I seek not yours, but you. For the children ought to not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. These are people he had longed for and sought after and prayed for and discipled. In verse 15, he says, "And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." Even though they hurt him, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, "I will come to you on my own dime, and I'm happy to be spent for you. I'll give to you." How's he able to do this? Well, if we look back in verse 7 of the same chapter, just right up there, it says, Paul says, the reason he does this is to keep him mindful of God's power in his life and Paul's inability. He talks about the grace that God's given. God gave him a thorn in the flesh, remember? Look at what he says in verse 9. He said unto me, "My grace is sufficient for thee. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Do you want the power of Christ to rest upon you in your relationships with other people? The word grace here, the favor, the loving kindness of the Lord, reminds me of the word agapeo, or unconditional love, the kind of love God had for the world back in John 3:16. And so many other verses we looked at in John. Paul says, because of the grace of God, the love of Christ in my life, because of those things, I can love you abundantly and freely. It doesn't matter how you love me, doesn't matter how you slander me, what you say about me, what you think about me behind closed doors. I can love you because of what God has done for me, how he's loved me. His grace and his love is enough, and I'm free to love people in such a way that allows me to love without needing something in return. Need people less. Find in God all that you need, and you'll be able to love people more. More joy, less worry. More witnessing, less concerned about what people think of you when you speak to them about Christ. More serving, less looking for something in return. More willingness to be spent for others, less anxiety over whether they value you. More hard conversations that help people be more like Christ, speaking the truth in love. Less bending over backwards to get them to like you. Oh, I can't tell her the truth because she won't like you anymore. Questions to ask yourself. How rooted am I in the love of God? How rooted am I in the love of God? Am I drawing daily on his strength through a relationship with him, or am I constantly worried about what other people think of me, or frustrated with the way I'm treated? Like Mrs. Brewster was talking about earlier about how she deserved this. You know, we think that all the time, ladies. I deserve to be treated a little better than this. I deserve a good friend. I deserve a husband who loves me. Here's another question. Am I able to serve and give to others even when they don't notice or appreciate or agree with me? Am I easily frustrated with the way I'm treated or when I feel I deserve better? Am I self-serving or self-giving? Do I truly love my spouse, my children, my friends, my parents, or do I need them to make me feel valuable? Do I place more emphasis on what they mean to me or how they affect my self-esteem than I do what Jesus has done for me and who he has made me? I am already over my time. But as a small girl, very young, I told people all the time that I needed them. I didn't tell them I needed them. I told them I loved them. See, you'll get in the habit. And I told them that constantly. A few people know that I'm adopted. Not everyone knows that, but I am. I was adopted at birth. I didn't live a hard life. There was nothing too traumatically difficult for my background. But just being a little bit different and knowing that my circumstances and my birth were different than everyone else's made me wonder if people really loved me. Like my whole life, it was just there. And so that was part of it. I constantly needed to know that people cared about me and loved me and wanted me around. They didn't want to leave, you know. And so that affected who I was as a person. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, early 30s that I finally realized that like it didn't matter who was around, who needed me, who wanted me, because Jesus needed me. He loved me and he wanted me. He didn't even need me, but he wanted me. And he loved me big enough to give and to serve. And that if he could do that for me, I could do that for other people. And because of the grace of God, I can extend true love toward other people. I'm praying for you ladies today. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, if you've ever really thought of it before, but when I heard it, it made a huge difference in my life. And so I'm really hoping that it makes a big difference in yours too. Let's go ahead and close in a word of prayer. Lord, you know how much my own heart has needed this time and time again. Please help us today. Help us be women who are full of the love of Jesus, love that gives and sacrifices. Help me to be so full of you that I don't need the approval or admiration of others. I pray, Lord, that we would be consumed with your glory and focused on the salvation of the world. And that because of that, Lord, we love you and we understand your love for us to the fullest so we can love others. Have the relationships that you mean for us to have that make sense for eternity. Give us a love for you so we can love others and not need them. For the gospel's sake. In Jesus' name, amen.